Alrighty, we are back. You're listening to Mind Body Radio. Our next guest is calling from San Diego, California. Let's welcome Tomas Frymann to the program. Thomas, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
Yes, very nice to be hearing from you. And we're going to be talking about your work today. I see you are the executive director of As We Wake. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct.
All right, excellent. So why don't you tell us a little about yourself, Thomas, and what it is that you do exactly?
Yeah, so I am a Columbia student in the spirituality and psychology lab, and my work is focused on the concept of interbeing. So what we do with As We Wake is we essentially are trying to spread a message that there's sort of a couple different ways to understand the self. And the narrative that our current society has might not be essentially the best one for ourselves and for nature, and also might not be aligned with science. So what we're doing in our research is kind of looking at how the neuroscience, how biology, psychology, physics all kind of point to a different understanding of the self than we typically have. And in our nonprofit, we kind of look at how that can translate into essentially making a better society.
So, what do you think is wrong with the way we're understanding ourselves nowadays? What would you say?
Yeah, I'd say there's nothing particularly wrong, but it may be a little bit limited. So the typical way we understand ourselves is sort of as beings that exist in the universe, kind of bounded individuals, and kind of restrict our notion of self just to the particular body and memories that we have. Whereas if we really think about it deeply, all of us have emerged from one connected system. You can think about this from a lot of lenses, like just going back to the Big Bang, for example. Every one of us was the size of, like a millionth of a toenail, kind of speck on a toenail. And that was us. That was an old version of us. So if we kind of tie a second part of our identity to the greater context that gave rise to us, we can see ourselves as the emergence of a connected system, and that whole system can hold the identity of each one of us, and that can kind of give rise to a feeling of kinship, a feeling of universal goodwill, that I want the best for you, I want the best for all the animals in the world, I want the best for every living creature, because in some sense, those all are another aspect of my ultimate self. So I really think that this goodwill and this sense of universal kinship has a lot of potential to sort of enhance our quality of being, reduce our fear of death, and increase just our sort of sense of cooperation and friendliness in our day-to-day lives.
Excellent. So I want to backtrack, Thomas. Can you give us an idea of your background? How did you get into this kind of work? What was it that first interested you in researching these topics?
Yeah, I actually came from UCLA originally. I was studying marine biology, so I was pretty interested in kind of just nature and how nature is working, and then segued into a double major in psychobio. So I started to get interested in the brain, and kind of making these connections between the way that natural complexity works and the way that the complexity of our human brain is working, and kind of tying nature and humanity together. From there, I traveled the world by myself for 2 years and did a lot of meditation, had some very deep psychedelic experiences, spent a lot of time alone in nature and kind of just contemplating, reading science. And I came to a very deep sort of recognition or epiphany that the nature of reality is a lot more grand and connected, and my sense of self really started to change into a direction that I would call spiritual, essentially. And I realized that this spirituality was really aligned with science. So that's when I basically took my work to Columbia and started looking at the psychological impact of this notion of identity and how that transformation plays out in the world.
Excellent. And I see you were once involved and worked with ayahuasca, which I think has become quite or becoming more well known thanks to the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't know if you've listened to him, but he talks a lot about that.
Yeah, I've had quite a few hours of taking jogs and listening to Joe.
Great. So, do you think that's an acceptable form of enlightenment, so to speak? Do you think that's a route people should take and is mostly beneficial?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think there's a lot of different paths. I think that, there's even within the psychedelics, ayahuasca compared to psilocybin, say, there are different routes and there are different tools for different people. I think the sort of obvious benefit of the psychedelic route is that you're pretty guaranteed to have a different experience of reality and expand your horizons in one way or the other. Some of the danger there is in how that expansion happens and making sure that it happens in a good context. So the work I did with ayahuasca happened at Rhythmia, which is a retreat center in Costa Rica. And we made sure that every participant there was medically checked, that they were supported by our whole team, that the ceremonies were held by very respectable and good intentioned shamans, which isn't the case if you do it in other places, some other places. So I think that ayahuasca is a great path. It comes with its own sort of challenges and a very strong importance of having it done in the right context. And I think that another thing to consider is that an experience that's very radical but very short takes a lot of time to process and digest. So different paths like meditation, that's kind of happening naturally as it's a sort of a longer and slower journey. So it's important also with the sort of more accelerated paths, not only to have a really good context that path is happening in, but also to really respect the process afterwards, and let it kind of sink in, digest, give yourself time, and really kind of pay due respect to that follow-up process.
Excellent. Now, moving forward, Thomas, talk to us about your goals with your research and your all you're doing. What's on the agenda? Anything exciting on your calendar?
Yeah. So our mission statement is open eyes for open hearts. A little play on words there. So it's like I as in me, like the letter I. And our goal really is to get as many people as we can educated and aware of the greater context of the self and sort of transforming the social notion of what it means to be a self. So we're obviously starting in the scale that we can work with, but the sky is the limit in terms of where we hope to go. And I really think that it is kind of somewhat of an anomaly, the way that we see the self in the Western context, if you compare that to a lot of different cultures and a lot of different times. And I think that changing that will really help us, especially in the West, to use the technological powers that we have to a better purpose. So what I'm really passionate about is sort of helping society set its compass, because we have so much power, we have so much potential. But I think what we really need is a direction to set that in. And I think that Interbeing and the work on identity and how we see ourselves in regards to the world, the natural world, other living creatures, that really is where the inner compass will be developed. So that's what I'm really passionate about. Yeah.
Right, excellent. And we are approaching our deadline here, Thomas. Did you have any other final thoughts or anything else on your mind before we wrap up?
Let's see. I think if anyone wants to work with us, they should definitely reach out to us.
Great.
We're happy to have collaborators, whether it's other nonprofits or individuals who are looking to do research, socially applied work. We have a website at aswewake.com, so you can find our information there. And we really love what we do, and it's an honor to have the possibility to be able to do it and work with people and be on the show with you.
All right, excellent. Thomas, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, then a big thank you to our audience as well. This is Mind Body Radio, and we're going to take a brief break. We'll have another guest coming up a little later. Stick around.